Movie theater goers of Reddit, have you ever walked out during the movie? If so, what movie was it and why did you walk out? My dad, my 11-year-old sister, and my 21-year-old self thought it would be nice to take my grandma out to dinner and a movie for her birthday. There was a light-hearted comedy in theaters at the time about a grandson who fell on hard times and had to move in with his grandmother, and hijinks ensure. We took my super conservative 87-year-old Christian grandmother to see Grandma's Boy. I think we made it to the point where Alex masturbates in the bathroom before Grandma loudly proclaimed everyone in the theater is going to heck and we had to leave. Still one of my favorite movies to this day. Always think about her when I watch it. Lol, I had a guy in high school take me to this on our first date, with his mother sitting right next to us. We got through the whole movie, uncomfortable as heck, and afterwards his mother was soupy. She ended up telling him that I was no good for him if I was able to sit through that filth. I was offended by that, so I took his virginity, and dated him for a year. Not me, but I worked at a theater in the late 80s and we had Mystic Pizza. We didn't sell very many tickets to it and then about 20 minutes in most everyone would come out demanding their money back. The manager would wait at the door with passes filled out waiting for them. Never could figure out why everyone was so mad about that movie. Dinosaur. I was screaming and crying because I was scared of the dinosaurs. My dad dragged me out of the theater. My dad brought me and my brothers to see Jurassic Park in the theaters at 9 p.m. After the T-Rex ate the lawyer, I spent the rest of the movie in the hall crying, terrified, had nightmares for weeks. My dad and brothers watched the rest of the movie, didn't even check on me. Little girl sobbing in the hallway of a movie theater. Yup, good times. It wasn't my choice, but when I was a kid I went to watch Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me with my mom and my friend. My mom was already pretty disgusted with the movie during the first 20 minutes. The tipping point for her was when Fat Bastard was laying in bed with Heather Graham and she puts that little tracker thing up his butt. My mom got furious and said we weren't watching any more of it and we walked into Star Wars Episode 1 instead. Go figure. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me with my mom and my friend. I thought that was the name of the movie. My parents walked me out of Jumanji as a kid because I couldn't emotionally handle Robin Williams getting hurt. I walked out of Captain America, The Winter Soldier. Not because it's a bad movie, but because the popcorn machine exploded and the theater caught on fire. Fun times. I walked out because the popcorn machine exploded and the theater caught on fire. Now I imagine you doing the slow-mo Armageddon walk, with popcorn machines blowing up in giant fireballs behind you. I had to leave during Titanic. My friend that I was there with began hysterically crying once the ship began sinking and declared she couldn't watch the rest. I was kinda annoyed, since it's not like it was a surprise that the ship was going to sink. I only left with her because she was simply inconsolable and making a scene at that point. I saw that movie with my mom, who's from Mexico City, and surprisingly this was a point of history that she'd missed out on. The second I heard Stephen, the boat is sinking, and there are not enough lifeboats was when I knew that this was going to be a pretty rough cinematic experience for my mom. I knew a guy who made 2 combat landings with the Marines in World War II, Saipan and Okinawa, and he had to walk out of Saving Private Ryan at the Omaha Beach scene. What to expect when you're expecting? It wasn't what I expected. Third Twilight film. Forced to go by then ex-girlfriend. The cinema flooded about 40 minutes in so we got evacuated. Was so happy. I walked out during Last House on the Left. Turns out a rough violation scene is not what you want to see when 2 16-year-olds go on a date. My first movie date with my ex was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I'd heard all this hype about the book so I was excited to see it. Yet, no one told me about that rape scene either. Not me, but saw someone else walk out. Me and a friend were seeing The Dictator. Up came the scene where a woman is giving birth in the store. I can't remember exactly how it played out, but I think it involved a fist in the butt or something. Anyways, this is where a grandma and her grandson walked out. He looks about 13. As she's storming out and he trailing behind, he's profusely apologizing, going, "I'm so sorry grandma. I had no idea it would be like that." One of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie theater. Walked out on Batman the Dark Knight. Movie started and it was way too loud. Eardrum burstingly loud. I know I wasn't the only one because anytime there was a sound above two people talking the entire theater would flinch or cover their ears. Went to the manager and let him know and he sighed and said he would take care of it. Few minutes later the movie was turned down so quiet that you couldn't hear anyone talking. Every person in the audience would turn their head or lean in when it was quiet. So I'll let the manager know again, to which he sighed angrily and stomped off. I realized he wasn't sighing because some high school kid didn't know what he was doing. He was angry at me for bothering him. Went back in and the movie was louder than before. Said frick it and demanded my money back. At first he refused and then about 50 people showed up behind me all demanding the same thing. Saw the movie the same day in another theater and it was perfect. Good movie. Heath Ledger was amazing. That's hilarious. I'm imaging the moment when he turned it up and the movie going from very quiet to very loud and everyone being like frick. I wanted desperately to walk out of The Last Airbender, but that would have meant waiting outside in the rain for an hour for my mum to pick me up. After finishing the film, I wished I had sat in the rain. Gamer. My mom took me as a surprise thinking it was going to be a perfect movie for me. I was in the 6th grade. Only broccoli assassins like that movie. No point in walking out. Once or twice. I've decided to take a nap though. I rarely find the time for a good nap. This is the best solution to a crap movie. Batman and Robin. We walked out and saw Men in Black. Much better. Movie called The Fog. Oh, fog kills people. Then stay out of the fricking fog. The 2005 one. Not to be confused with The Mist. If you haven't seen that, it's really good. Don't read anything about it. Just watch it, and then maybe report back after. The opening night for Dark Knight Rises. It wasn't the movie itself. Loved it, but there was this one Joker that fricked it up for everybody. I'll never understand why people can't sit down, shut up, and let everyone else watch the movie they paid for. Anyway, this guy must have seen the movie in advance and kept loudly dropping spoilers. I specifically went to the premiere because I wanted to see it before anybody had a chance to ruin it for me by telling me what happened. So, I cut my losses, left, and came back to watch it the next night. I thought this was going in a much darker direction. Friend's dad took us to see South Park. Bigger, longer, and uncut. He decided it was too vulgar for us about 20 minutes in. We were 12. He decided to take us to Hooters instead. 9/10 would do again. I wonder what his thought process was. Super Babies. Baby Geniuses 2. I was with a friend who was desperate to see it, for some freaking reason. About 40 minutes into it, I reached my limit. I stood up and said I'll be outside having a smoke. See ya when it's over. Maybe, but I really couldn't handle one more second of that crap fest. It's completely insane to me that you both old enough to be smoking and to have a friend who was desperate to see Baby Geniuses 2. Wife and I went to see Daredevil. Turns out we accidentally went into the wrong theater, which was showing How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. We were both looking at each other, thinking this is an awfully strange opening to Daredevil. Once we figured it out, we left and went to the right theater, but in retrospect we should have just stayed there. I actually thought that movie was really funny. Not me, but my mom walked out of the first Matrix. She and my aunt had no idea it was a sci-fi movie, and at the beginning scene in the car where they rip the thing out of Neo's chest, they burst out laughing and left the theater. What did they think it was? Oh. Yep. 2 weeks notice. I was a teenager with my first serious girlfriend. The movie was an excuse to get together. We bought tickets to show The Stub If Asked by Parents, walked in, and stood up and left 10 minutes later to go make out in the car. No idea if the movie was any good, but I saw a naked girl in person for the first time that night, so I rate it as one of the best movies of all time. James Bond. Quantum of Solace. Best movie I never watched. The Box starring Cameron Diaz and James Marsden. It was aggressively nonsensical. Dad and I went to see War of the Worlds. I thought it was really dull, so looked over to see if Dad thought the same, so we could leave, and he looked proper into the film, so I didn't say anything and watched the rest of it. Afterwards, Dad said that he was glad that I had enjoyed the film as he hadn't and wanted to leave. He had done the same thing that I had done and thought that I was enjoying it. TLDR. Missed out on the chance to walk out Tom Cruise. I like that movie. The noise the tripods make is awesome. When the 5th Harry Potter movie came out, we had to pretty much drag my friend to see it. He's a military guy who hates fantasy movies. I was shocked he even agreed to go, albeit reluctantly. One of the first lines of the movie was "Okay, Harry, wand at the ready," and he loudly scoffed. About 10 minutes into the movie, while Harry and Dumbledore were attempting to recruit Slughorn, a lone chair sat in the room of an empty house. I whispered to my friend, "He's the chair." His response was, "If he's the chair, I'm leaving." Sure enough, Dumbledore prodded the chair with his wand. Slughorn's head popped up, exclaiming, "Merlin's beard." My friend kept his word. I remember thinking that movie was alright, and I saw it as an adult. But goddammit if that description doesn't make it sounds like the stupidest thing imaginable. That Frankenstein movie with Sting in it. Walked out and saw Weird Science instead. Yeah, I'm old. Not me, but a guy I ended up going with. Thought I was on a date with a girl. She ended up inviting another guy because they had been talking as well. I end up going for the handhold during the movie. Middle school. I know. He saw this, called his mother, and got up saying he was going to the bathroom and never came back. His name was Mark and the movie theater was the Marquee. So for the rest of middle and high school, anytime we wanted to leave early we'd ask to pull a Marquee Mark. So your guy, you went on a date with a girl. That girl invited another guy named Mark. During the movie you went to hold hands with a girl. Mark saw this and bailed. Sorry, from the way you described it my first thought was you were trying to hold hands with Mark. I didn't walk out. I would intentionally go see terrible movies. Why? I won 52 free tickets one year, and when my girlfriend at the time would do her photography classes I would go see a bad movie in an empty theater and kill 2 hours by sleeping in the cinema if there was nothing good out I hadn't seen already. The weekend staff got to know me and would tell me which movie had the least tickets sold so I wouldn't be disturbed. I once took a girl on a first date to go see The Aristocrats, the Paul Provenza documentary about the alleged dirtiest joke ever told. Personally I love that stuff, but she was so thoroughly unimpressed that I felt embarrassed after the first 30 minutes and we left. She didn't laugh, smile or say anything from the start of the film until I dropped her off at her place. We never spoke again. I actually got to meet Paul Provenza a few years later and told him the story. He thought it was pretty funny and gave me some great advice. He said roughly the equivalent to, "Don't sweat it. If a girl can't laugh at something like that, she's not the right one for you anyway." A few years after that, I watched it again with my then girlfriend and we both laughed non-stop through the whole thing. She is now my wife. TLDR. First date disaster watching The Aristocrats. Watched it again later in life with new girlfriend, then married her. Note to self, The Aristocrats is different than The Aristocrats. I had a rare afternoon off while on tour in Paris. I decided to see a movie, bought a ticket, bought some popcorn, sweets, a big drink etc. I walked in the theater, sat down and then promptly got back up again and walked out. In a moment of blithering stupidity I totally forgot I was in Paris and the movie was in French. I can't speak French. I went to Madagascar 3 when I first moved to Prague and it took me about 8-10 minutes for me to figure out the animals weren't just being goofy and speaking animal. Czech is a cute cartoony language. I almost walked out of The Lady in the Water, but it was just so bad we couldn't leave. Marley and Me, the only movie I've ever walked out on, and it was because I was sobbing like a bee toward the end with 15-20 minutes left to go and couldn't stand to watch another minute of that emotional torture. Had to walk out on Passion of the Christ when my sister threw up in the middle of the movie. There was a priest in the theater and his reaction to it had me in more stitches than Jesus on my way to the car. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.